The first Innovate Symposium was held in August 2011. The aim of the symposium was to look at some critical questions in the field of community engagement and community development. And so we wanted to focus on three key areas. Firstly, around innovative engagement. What are new ways of working, using social media, using different approaches that's going to open up the field of engagement? Secondly, what are the creative practices that we can use, and how do we use creative arts to more broadly work with communities and new ways to engage people? Thirdly, what are the ways in which we can use community development processes that really make an impact but also open up new models of engagement and social change? At the same time, we wanted the symposium to be exciting and a set of practices that were creative in itself. So alongside the workshops, the discussions, the presentations, we also had a number of creative artists working alongside to demonstrate those practices.
Everybody picks two pegs and it gives a bit more of a depth or dimension to people's personalities having two pegs rather than just one. Opposing pegs, similar pegs, but when you put them together it kind of almost has a new meaning in itself.
This is something different. As Kat said, this is an unconference. This is about experience, this is about challenge, this is about innovation and true levels of engagement. So we want everyone over the course of the next 2 days to be a real part of this, to be really engaged and to see this as your conference.
Innovate Symposium is really an unconference style kind of event where we gather practitioners from across Australia to look into different ways or new ways of community engagement. We know that as our world progresses and things change, the traditional form of community engagement has changed. So this is a way where we get together and discuss about what are the changes and how can we, I guess in some ways, look into the different ways that we do community engagement in Australia.
So I've come today just to try and stay current and find new ways of engaging, and particularly dealing with students. I need to be able to know how the younger generation want to engage and what's meaningful for them, so that's what I'm hoping to do. As well as, if I can, share some of my experiences.
The main thing is the connections I've made. I think that's been the strength of Innovate, that it's brought together people who are at the upper echelon of the Australian volunteering and social entrepreneurship community.
For me, it's really about meeting new people. I really like interacting with all of these people that work in not-for-profits or with government or at universities, and they all just bring such different university and real-world experience.
Why the interest in this field at the moment, and there is tremendous interest, is firstly, obviously, we're dealing with the changing nature of connection, belonging, those traditional ways in which people connected, the traditional ways in which we joined, we stayed connected, have changed. The notion of a wicked challenge is one that is much more complex than we can solve with one singular solution or one singular approach. So wicked challenges are those such things as climate change, etc., which require a fundamental shift in perceptions across a broad range of thinking and acting. We know, and increasingly we have that limit to the three-sector model. The fact that, in fact, we've frustrated many of us with the traditional non-profit split, government split, corporates. Some of you, I know, are engaged with those corporates in really interesting ways and work differently and look at collaboration. We're interested in exploring that. Obviously, the technological advances make it possible to do lots of other stuff. Finally, here it is. Here's my presentation about the edge of the core. This is my great learning in the last few months. Is fundamentally, I seem to spend my life for the last 5 years trying to play in the core. I keep thinking that somehow the edge was going to, infiltrate the core, transform it. I'm increasingly frustrated by that, so this is where my thinking is now. I think that a lot of the things that we do are in fact on the edge. The edge for me is about small groups of passionate learning, it's about local initiatives, it's about being interconnected as required. Drivers for that are variety from choice to necessity, from the notion of resistance. Many of the people that we work with, as you know, or are part of, are in fact resisting the dominant discourse, the things that they say don't work for them or doesn't make sense to them or they feel excluded. In this sphere, for me, the opportunity is that it opens up much more around play, around passion, around engagement in more meaningful ways, but it obviously is a much more difficult space to inhabit than the core, because it's consistently in part in resistance. Kat's term is, which I think is really critical, is social courage. It continually is about reinventing social courage in this space.
Social courage is really about learning how to put your values into action. It's about recognising first what your values are, and then what your actions are, and how can you make them more aligned. So it's about taking the courageous decision of actually looking at your life and saying, do my actions reflect my values, or do I need to change? And if you need to change, you also have to recognise that occasionally it's going to be uncomfortable and difficult, but that ultimately making sure that your life aligns with your values is the most rewarding thing you can do. And it requires a lot of courage to put that into practice every day, because it's the small, minute changes and actions that you do that can seem insignificant that have a big impact.
I'm really interested in community engagement and understanding different communities and looking at what projects that I could use or that I could be inspired by to replicate or remodel in this community that I'm now living in. Like what Mark was explaining about finding the people that are on the edge and connecting with them, and that's sort of what started to happen in Dungog where I'm living, is that I have found some unique, amazing individuals, and we're now looking at how we can do something really positive in the town with regards to establishing a community college there.
You know, often when we look at things like climate change and we see the sort of future of the planet, and the picture in one sense looks incredibly bleak, and it's really easy to despair over the state of the planet and feel like there's nothing that we can be doing to create change. The ways in which people are already taking moves to change how we live on the planet. And so I was using the example of community gardening, but that's just one tiny example. And when you put all those little, what seem like little things, you put them all together and you've actually got big change happening. But often we can't put that together usually to see the big change that's going on.
Most inspiring thing was hearing the stories from people like Jenny, who's doing all this alternative economics stuff, and pointing out that in fact 50% of economic output is not commercial, it's people sharing and helping each other's neighbours out. That has been a real mindset shift for me.
I've really been inspired just by the amount of people doing amazing work all around, in not just the not-for-profit sector, but in the corporate sector as well, trying to use creativity and trying to be innovative and trying to do things in a better way. So it's really exciting to have so many excellent minds in the one room.
We're on a journey. It doesn't matter where we are. We could be further along, we could be less along. And it's not even, we're not even going anywhere. There's no destination. There's no point in time where we're going to be like, I'm perfect, I'm arrested, I'm in jail, I must be perfect. I'm there, I've made it. So it's just this idea of slowly learning and moving forward and building up this commitment. And I think it's commitment to ourselves, commitments to our values, commitment to our actions and what we're working in our practice within our community. So if we take a look back, and I'd like us to kind of take this idea of social courage and this commitment to ourselves, and ask ourselves, where are we on this journey?
Positive deviance is that notion that what are the things that are not in the norm but are actually working for us. So looking at our organisations, those things that actually are people are doing things differently, they're deviating from what we tell them, but in fact it works better than what we traditionally do. For me now, I'm exploring, and I hope this is the beginning of that next stage of that, of how we support, how we scale up, how we link, extend, promote, promulgate, share stories of success of the edge.
Was this idea of the edge and the core. Something that I think again I saw working through a lot of the projects. People are working at the edge. Whether or not the core joins you or whether or not your work gets into the core, I don't see that as being something that we're really pushing towards. There are so many people here who are just so happy about the work that they are doing and the impact they are having. I think it's something that Jenny said quite well in her first presentation, that we really need to celebrate the successes that are happening. We need to celebrate the change that is happening, and we don't have to keep looking at it through that lens of, but are we changing the core? If you're working at the edge and you are having an impact at the edge, then that's absolutely unreal and you need to continue to push ahead with that. I think to illustrate that, there's this video that I'm sure most, if not all of you have seen, but this is the image that came to my mind.
First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost inspirational.
Right, I think there are a lot of lone nuts. Awesome. And I think we all need to embrace that and be prepared to play on the edge and have fun. We've got to support the lone nuts. And you've got to support that.
For me, living in the regional area, it's really hard to stay connected to new ideas and to be supported, and so I have to be really proactive at seeking out support. Coming here has reminded me that there are people like me, that I'm not all by myself, and that, yeah, I'm not alone. That's been really nice.